The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, also known as frequency illusion, is a cognitive bias that occurs when you learn about something new or obscure, and then suddenly you start noticing it everywhere. It's as if the thing you just learned about has suddenly become extremely common. For example, if you recently heard about a rare breed of dog and then start seeing that same breed on the street, in advertisements, and even on TV shows, it's not because there's been a sudden increase in their prevalence. Instead, your brain has become hypersensitive to that particular piece of information, making you notice it more often. This phenomenon highlights how our brains filter and prioritize information based on what we've recently learned or become interested in. It's a fascinating insight into how our perception is shaped by our cognitive processes. The Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which individuals with low abilities at a particular task overestimate their abilities. In other words, people who are less competent tend to believe they are more competent than they actually are. This bias can lead to overconfidence and a lack of awareness of one's own limitations. Conversely, individuals who are highly skilled or knowledgeable in a particular area often underestimate their abilities and assume that what comes naturally to them is easy for everyone else. This effect is named after psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, who first described it in a research paper in 1999. The Dunning-Kruger effect highlights the importance of self-awareness and the need for accurate self-assessment in various aspects of life, from work to personal relationships. It's a reminder that sometimes, the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know, and vice versa. The pratfall effect. The pratfall effect is a psychological phenomenon that suggests that making a minor mistake or being slightly vulnerable can make a person more likable and attractive, especially in the eyes of others. This effect highlights the idea that perfection can be off-putting, while showing a bit of imperfection can make a person seem more relatable and endearing. Research conducted by psychologist Elliot Aronson in the 1960s found that people who are generally considered competent and capable are perceived as even more likable if they make a small, non-threatening mistake. This can be applied in various social contexts, such as public speaking, job interviews, or even dating. The pratfall effect serves as a reminder that nobody is perfect, and demonstrating a touch of vulnerability can enhance our social interactions and make us more relatable to others. The illusion of truth effect. The illusion of truth effect is a cognitive bias that suggests people are more likely to believe information to be true after they've heard it multiple times, even if the information is false or unreliable. In other words, repetition can make us perceive information as more valid and accurate. This psychological phenomenon underscores the power of repetition in shaping our beliefs and opinions. Advertisers, politicians, and propagandists often use this effect to their advantage by frequently repeating their messages, regardless of their accuracy, to make people more likely to accept and internalize them. Understanding the illusion of truth effect highlights the importance of critical thinking and fact-checking, as well as the need to be aware of how the repetition of information can influence our judgments and beliefs. Hedonic treadmill. The hedonic treadmill, also known as hedonic adaptation, is a psychological theory that suggests that people return to a relatively stable level of happiness or satisfaction despite major positive or negative events or life changes. In other words, our happiness tends to revert to a baseline, even after significant positive or negative experiences. For example, if someone wins the lottery and experiences a sudden increase in wealth, they may initially feel much happier. However, over time, they adapt to their new circumstances, and their happiness tends to level off, often returning to a level similar to what it was before winning the lottery. Conversely, individuals who experience a major setback or tragedy may initially feel very unhappy, but with time, they often adapt to their new circumstances and recover a significant portion of their happiness. Understanding the hedonic treadmill can lead to a greater appreciation of the role of adaptation in our lives and encourage us to focus on factors other than material wealth or external events when seeking long-term happiness and life satisfaction. The Benjamin Franklin effect. The Benjamin Franklin effect is a psychological phenomenon in which a person who has performed a favor for someone is more likely to develop positive feelings toward that person, compared to if they had received a favor from that person. This concept is named after the American founding father Benjamin Franklin, who first described it in his autobiography. Essentially, when we do something nice for someone, our brains tend to rationalize our actions by convincing us that we must like the person we've helped. This effect highlights the idea that our actions can influence our feelings and attitudes, contrary to the common belief that our feelings lead to our actions. In practical terms, if you want to build rapport or improve your relationship with someone, consider asking them for a small favor rather than doing something for them. It can lead to a positive shift in their perception of you. The Hawthorne effect. The Hawthorne effect is a psychological phenomenon in which people modify their behavior when they know they are being observed. This effect was first observed during a series of studies conducted at the Western Electric Hawthorne Works in Chicago in the 1920s and 1930s, which aimed to investigate the relationship between lighting conditions and worker productivity. What researchers found was that simply being aware of being observed or studied led workers to improve their performance, regardless of the actual changes in lighting conditions. This suggests that the act of paying attention to people can influence their behavior and increase their productivity or performance. The Hawthorne effect has since become a widely recognized concept in psychology and has implications in various fields, including education, business, and research methodology. It underscores the idea that people often behave differently when they know they are being watched, leading to potential biases in observational studies. The spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is a cognitive bias that describes the tendency for people to believe that others are paying more attention to them than they actually are. In other words, individuals often overestimate how much others notice or care about their appearance, behavior, or actions in social situations. For example, if someone has a small stain on their shirt or feels self-conscious about their appearance, they might assume that everyone they encounter is focused on that flaw. In reality, people around them are often too absorbed in their own thoughts and concerns to notice these minor details. Understanding the spotlight effect can help individuals overcome feelings of self-consciousness and social anxiety by recognizing that others are not as attentive to their actions and appearance as they might believe. It's a reminder that people are generally more preoccupied with their own lives than with scrutinizing others. The cheerleader effect. The cheerleader effect is a cognitive bias that suggests people tend to perceive individuals as more attractive when they are seen as part of a group, rather than in isolation. In other words, someone might appear more attractive when surrounded by friends or colleagues compared to when viewed alone. This phenomenon can be explained by the way our brains process visual information and make quick judgments about social situations. When people are in a group, our attention is distributed among multiple individuals, and our brains tend to focus on the overall impression rather than scrutinizing each person individually. Understanding the cheerleader effect can provide insights into how our perception of attractiveness can be influenced by social context and the people surrounding an individual. The doorway effect. The doorway effect is a cognitive phenomenon that occurs when people tend to forget information or tasks shortly after passing through a doorway. This effect is often experienced in everyday life when you enter a room with a specific intention but then forget what you were going to do once you're inside. Researchers believe that our brains create mental compartments for different spaces, and passing through a doorway signals the brain to transition to a new compartment. This transition can disrupt short-term memory, causing us to forget our original intentions. The doorway effect is an intriguing example of how our environment can influence memory and cognition, and it highlights the complexity of how our brains organize and process information as we move through different physical spaces. The humor effect in persuasion. The humor effect is a psychological phenomenon that suggests people are more likely to be persuaded by a message or argument if it includes humor. When humor is used effectively, it can capture people's attention, make the message more memorable, and create a positive emotional association with the content. This effect has been widely observed in advertising and marketing, where humorous commercials tend to be more memorable and have a greater impact on consumer behavior. However, it's not limited to advertising. It can also be applied to various forms of communication and persuasion. Understanding the humor effect can be a valuable tool for communicators and persuaders, as it highlights the power of humor in engaging and influencing audiences.